Modification.
Modification. The act or process of changing something in order to improve it or make it more acceptable, a change that is made. For example, considerable modification of the existing system is needed.
Monitor.
Monitor. A screen that shows information from a computer. A television screen used to show particular kinds of information. For example, the details of today's flights are displayed on the monitor.
Moreover. Used to introduce some new information that adds to or supports what you have said previously. For example, a talented artist.
Municipal. Connected with or belonging to a town, city, or district that has its own local government. For example, municipal elections are councils.
Must. Used to say that something is necessary or very important, sometimes involving a rule or a law. For example, all visitors must report to reception.
Mystery.
Mystery. Something that is difficult to understand or to explain. For example, it is one of the great unsolved mysteries of this century.
Naked. Not wearing any clothes. For example, she was clutching the sheet around her naked body.
Namely.
Namely. Used to introduce more exact and detailed information about something that you have just mentioned. For example, we need to concentrate on our target audience.
Naturally. In a way that you would expect. For example, naturally.
Necessarily.
Necessarily. Used to say that something cannot be avoided. For example, the number of places available is necessarily limited.
Necessary.
Necessary. That is needed for a purpose or a reason. For example, necessary to do something.
Necessity. The fact that something must happen or be done, the need for something. For example, necessity for something.
Need. A situation when something is necessary or must be done. For example, to satisfy/meet/fulfill a need. Nest. A hollow place or structure that a bird makes or chooses for laying its eggs in and sheltering its young. For example, sparrows building a nest of twigs and dry grass.
Nevertheless.
Nevertheless. Despite something that you have just mentioned. For example, there is little chance that we will succeed in changing the law. Nevertheless.
News. New information about something that has happened recently. For example, what's the latest news? Newsletter. A report containing news of the activities of a club or organization that is sent regularly to all its members. For example, our sailing club produces a monthly newsletter.
Next. After something else, then, afterwards. For example, what happened next?
Nightmare. A dream that is very frightening or unpleasant. For example, he still has nightmares about the accident.
Nonsense.
Nonsense. Ideas, statements, or beliefs that you think are silly or not true. For example, reports that he has resigned are nonsense.
Norm. A situation or a pattern of behavior that is usual or expected. For example, the new design is a departure from the norm. Normal. The usual or average state, level or standard. For example, above, below normal.
North. In or towards the north. For example, North London.
Obey. To do what you are told or expected to do. For example, obey something.
Object.
Object. A thing that can be seen and touched, but is not alive. For example, everyday objects such as cups and saucers.
Object.
Object. A thing that can be seen and touched, but is not alive. For example, everyday objects such as cups and saucers.
Objective.
Objective. Not influenced by personal feelings or opinions, considering only facts. For example, an objective assessment of the situation.
Obsess. To completely fill your mind so that you cannot think of anything else, in a way that is not reasonable or normal. For example, be obsessed by somebody/something.
Obstacle. A situation, an event, etc. that makes it difficult for you to do or achieve something. For example, so far.
Obviously. Used when giving information that you expect other people to know already or agree with. For example, obviously.
Occurrence.
Occurrence. Something that happens or exists. For example, a common/everyday/frequent/regular occurrence.
Off. Down or away from a place or at a distance in space or time. For example, I fell off the ladder.
Oh. Used when you are reacting to something that has been said, especially if you did not know it before. For example, I saw Ben yesterday. Oh yes.
Oil. A thick liquid that is found in rock underground. For example, several companies are drilling for oil in the region.
Old-fashioned. Not modern, no longer fashionable. For example, old-fashioned clothes/styles/methods/equipment.
Only. Used to say that no other or others of the same group exist or are there. For example, she's their only daughter.
Option.
Option. Something that you can choose to have or do, the freedom to choose what you do. For example, as I see it.
Ought. Used to say what is the right thing to do. For example, they ought to apologize.
Ours. The one or ones that belong to us. For example, their house is very similar to ours.
Outfit.
Outfit. A set of clothes that you wear together, especially for a particular occasion or purpose. For example, she was wearing an expensive new outfit.
Output. The amount of something that a person, a machine, or an organization produces. For example, manufacturing output has increased by 8%.
Overcome. To succeed in dealing with or controlling a problem that has been preventing you from achieving something. For example, she overcame injury to win the Olympic gold medal.
Own. To have something that belongs to you, especially because you have bought it. For example, do you own your house or do you rent it?
Pack. To put clothes, etc. into a bag in preparation for a trip away from home. For example, I haven't packed yet.
Paper. The thin material that you write and draw on and that is also used for wrapping and packing things. For example, a piece of sheet of paper.
Parameter. Something that decides or limits the way in which something can be done. For example, to set/define the parameters.
Parish.
Parish. An area that has its own church, and that a priest is responsible for. For example, a parish church priest. Passive. Accepting what happens, or what people do without trying to change anything or oppose them. For example, he played a passive role in the relationship. Path. A way or track that is built or is made by the action of people walking. For example, a dirt/gravel/concrete path.
Pathway. A track that serves as a path. For example, they came out of the woods and onto a pathway.
Patrol. To go around an area or a building at regular times to check that it is safe and that there is no trouble. For example, troops patrolled the border day and night.
Peculiar. Strange or unusual, especially in a way that is unpleasant or makes you worried. For example, a peculiar smell or taste.
Perfect.
Perfect. Having everything that is necessary, complete and without faults or weaknesses. For example, in perfect condition.
Permanently. In a way that lasts for a long time or for all time in the future, in a way that exists all the time. For example, the stroke left his right side permanently damaged.
Persist.
Persist. To continue to do something despite difficulties or opposition, in a way that can seem unreasonable. For example, persist in doing something.
Persistent. Determined to do something despite difficulties, especially when other people are against you and think that you are being annoying or unreasonable. For example, how do you deal with persistent salesmen who won't take no for an answer?
Piece. An amount of something that has been cut or separated from the rest of it, a standard amount of something. For example, piece of something. Pile. To put things one on top of another, to form a pile. For example, pile something.
Plan. To make detailed arrangements for something you want to do in the future. For example, plan something.
Plastic.
Plastic. Made of plastic. For example, a plastic bag bottle cup.